flag pledge led by Nate Henry.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please silence your cell phones. And we're looking for approval of the agenda.
Move approval. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Mr. Chair, just on the agenda, I would like to note that I forgot public appearances after consent agenda, so we need to add that.
Yes, as I did. Consent agenda?
Move the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay. Nobody wants to take anything off, apparently. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Mr. Gruber, you're up. Come to the front and state your name, address, and then talk 3 minutes about whatever you want to talk about.
Okay. Yes, my name is Ron Gruber. I live on Nicollet County 21, east of Highway 14, or west of Highway 1415. And 60918 County Road 21. It's New Ulm. Anyway, what I'm getting at is just recently, well, I've talked to John here, and traffic is just unbelievably horrible. I did last week or the week before, Highway Patrol was through, and finally the semis are a little bit less. But that road is not designed for semis. And but anyway, be that as it may, it has gone down a little bit, but just coming over here, same old story. I meet them, and now they've figured it out because the Highway Patrol is there. Now they're coming in the middle of the night. They all, they sleep on the road, have to go on the road, stay so many hours off, and now they're coming through at night. I hear them roaring all the time. And the other thing is the traffic, the car traffic, motorcycles, bicycles. Nicollet County Road 21 is not a bike path. I've talked to the chief deputy here at the Nicollet County Sheriff's Office, and he says, well, they have a right on the road. Maybe so, but that road is not designed for bicycles. Just Saturday, I was in New Ulm, was coming home, and a bicyclist in front of me, okay? I'm coming to a rise, double yellow line on 90% of the road. So I slowed down, stayed behind the bicycle because I'm not going to pass on a hill going up, okay? Guess what? A guy comes up, roaring up behind me and slams on the brakes because he almost rear-ended me. Nicollet County Road 21 is not a bike trail. If they want a bike trail, then you need to put a wider shoulder on. There's only a 1 foot shoulder. The white line goes to the blacktop, and from there it's about a foot of gravel, and that's it. And that's not a bicycle path. But since our famous New Ulm and MnDOT, they put a bike path out of New Ulm, and it leads right to 21. I don't even know why. Doesn't anybody on County Road or the commissioners have anything to say about something like that? But anyway, it's terrible. It's absolutely horrible. And then two bicycles go by, so they go side by side, so they can talk while they're driving. That road isn't designed for that. And a couple other issues. One other one is I put my land in rim and crep because of the flooding all the time in the river bottom. Okay. I've talked to the county. I've called them, spraying the thistles in the ditch. Well, guess what? Last year it was like winter in July or August, and the thistles. I've got a mow, and I'm supposed to go out there with a hand sprayer and spray all these little patches of thistles because the county didn't spray their thistles in the road ditch. Another issue. So anyway, I appreciate your time, and something needs to be done on County Road 21. Last thing, the county put a speed thing. There's a county gravel pit on the other side of County Road 14. And they put a a speed thing when you're coming up. It tells you how fast you're driving. That road is probably just as bad, but our one between Highway 1415 and County Road 14, that is the worst path around there. And, and then I talked to the chief deputy. I said, how come when you come down County Road 14 from St. George or County Road 5, you come in, I said, how come? It says no trucks to the west and no trucks to the east. He said, it's not an enforceable sign. Why have a sign up there then if that's the case? I don't understand it. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you. I guess I'll just respond on that bike path anyway. Nicollet County did reject that.
Right.
And the city of New Ulm agreed to take care of it. MnDOT put it in. Is that right, Seth? That's the short of it. I don't know. Do we just go on with the meeting from this point, or does Seth want to say anything? Or
This can be an item we can put on a future workshop and have Sheriff Lang here as well to discuss the gentleman's concerns.
Yep.
which he was invited today. I mean, you invited Sheriff Lang.
Yeah, he wasn't able to be here.
Okay.
But he's aware of the concerns.
Okay. Thank you, Rod.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Any other public appearances? Apparently not. Seth, you're up.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board and staff. One item for the board to consider today, and it's to consider an Xcel Energy Hall Road and Access Agreement. If you recall, back in 2017, Xcel Energy and ITC Midwest began an extensive public process to determine where a new upgraded 345 kilovolt transmission line would be installed. The energy grid in this area was under capacity and they needed to build in additional capacity. And so myself and commissioners participated in some of those public meetings and hearings. The county had submitted several letters commenting on route options, and then finally all the public testimony was taken. It went to the Minnesota PUC, and they determined at that point what that preferred route would be. We are at a point now that Xcel Energy is getting ready to build this expansion, and they will be needing to utilize several county road facilities for haul routes and several accesses along those county roads. And so myself and the county attorney have been working with staff from Xcel to develop this haul road and access agreement. You should have a copy of that agreement in your packet, along with attachments showing which roads that they will be using, along with various access points. So they're going to be using portions of County Road 13, 6, 41, 77, 25, and 23, and then various access points along those roads. So the haul road use and temporary access agreement lays out the different responsibilities both entities have to each other as these routes are used. So I'd be more than happy to answer any questions on this.
Any questions for Seth? Yes.
Yeah. Is there a separate agreement, or is there no intent to use any township roads in this?
I'm sure they'll be using township roads, but they will have to
Establish a separate agreement with each of those.
yes,
jurisdictions,
as the
okay.
townships are the road authority for their
I
roads.
just wanted to make sure
Correct.
that was.
Yep.
That's just one township?
I think that's 2 townships, isn't it?
They'll be going through multiple townships from Mankato all the way south to the Wilmarth station to the south. So they'll be going through
I think
several counties.
Some of the
to do
some of
that.
the
In our county. Is it?
well, I think it's Belgrade, Nicollet,
Oh, is it
and
Nicollet also? Okay.
yeah, on part of the corner, at least according to the map attached.
Yeah,
And that's
bulk
why
of it will be belt
I'm
grade.
assuming that that would be the case, and
Yep.
both of them have had utility work done before, so they
Yeah.
kind of know what to expect here to some extent.
Nice thing about this project is they'll be working on the same alignment of a currently
Right.
existing 345 kilovolt line, and they'll
It'll just
be
be
hanging
side by
two.
side.
They'll be hanging two circuits on new poles. So,
Other questions? Yes.
How long will this project take?
it will go into next year. Yep. It appears that they're starting on our end first, I believe, so we may be done before the south end.
So, Jack?
Sure, thank you, and maybe this is a question for a county attorney. On the taking of land, will there be taking of land, and has that been established as to who will get how much?
That's separate and apart from this hall agreement, and
I
the county
understand.
wouldn't be involved in any of that taking procedure.
You would not?
No, we would not be involved in any of the taking because it would be initiated by the company, and I believe there's one, if I'm understanding correctly, there may be one piece of litigation regarding that issue. That's separate and apart from the county.
And I knew it was separate from the hall. I felt like we were done talking about the hall. And I just wanted to clarify that.
Anybody else?
I'd make the motion,
Do we have a motion?
the agreement.
Well, I'll second it if there's discussion or questions.
Any discussion? We have a motion and a second?
This isn't a resolution, this is not.
No.
You can yea or nay it.
Any other questions, discussion?
Well, I'm sure, Mr. Chair, it states in here someplace if our roads are damaged, Excel gets to pay, right?
Yes.
And
Yep, well-
That's a guarantee.
Yep.
I don't know if that applies to a property that we don't have control over, i.e. farmland lands.
No, this agreement would only apply to county road right away. Yep. Our roads the roads they propose on using are in very good shape. I anticipate little chance of damage, but there's always that possibility.
And is that your judgment that would determine damage?
Yes.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair,
Yes.
they'll be hauling new towers.
Yes, they plan on using a monopole type structure. So right now you see a lot of what they call probably an H-frame structure out there, takes, more room. And so the upgraded line should have a smaller footprint and nicer for the farming community to farm around. So H-pole type structure's gone, single big monopole structures.
Do you have an idea, if I may continue, what the weight of those structures is?
Oh boy, I couldn't tell you offhand what those are. Yeah, and they won't come, they typically don't come in all assembled in one piece, and so there'll be multiple loads to bring towers in.
And what kind of a crane or size of crane to lift these up?
It'll be a fairly large crane. I mean, those structures are fairly tall. Yeah.
And those cranes usually bring their weights in a separate truck.
Right.
Yeah.
We're done? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Mr.
Updates from you on things?
I was going to ask you, Mr. Chair, if you'd like a
Yes.
project
Yeah,
update on our
process.
various projects. County Road 21 has been progressing very well until, probably about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. Both abutments, the concrete was poured. We're ready for concrete beams. Unfortunately, the precaster for the precast concrete beams had an outbreak of COVID, and they had to shut down for almost 2 full weeks, and so they could not make our beams, and here we sit waiting for beams. But so far, the plan is to have those beams and set them this Friday out there. And so there's a very large crane coming in, and we'll be setting up on Thursday, and then the beams arrive on Friday, and they will set those. This crane is very, very big. That single crane will pick those beams by itself and set them by themselves. And so that's a fairly long reach to put those out there, so this should be a very exciting portion of the project
I look forward to your video.
Yes.
If one were to witness this, would we want to be on the east side or the west side?
If one would want to witness it, you should have a vest on and come to the west side.
Okay.
The crane will be sitting on the east side. Yes.
And to clear anything up, that's in the neighborhood of Fort Ridge Lake, the other side of.
Yeah, right
State
outside.
4.
Yes, right outside the entrance to Fort Ridgely State Park. Yep.
Anything
So,
else?
yeah, nutshell, there's the project completion date will be pushed out a ways. Hopefully, we don't have any other virus-related delays with that. But all in all, the project is coming along well. I sent out an email last Friday announcing that we have started advertising for bids on our County Road 12 project. And of course, that project is to raise the flooded portion of County Road 12, plus do approximately additional 2.2 miles of reconstructive work. We have a bid opening on June 30th. When we open bids, the apparent low bidder at that point will have to submit information to MnDOT regarding disadvantaged business enterprise requirements. The state has upwards of 2 weeks to 3 weeks to review the submission of those documents. Once we receive word back from that agency that the contractor has met those obligations, then the county board can move forward to execute and award that project. So we're hopeful then in the contract we have a start date of August 17th. We also have a completion date for the entire project to be done of October 29th of 2021. And you may wonder, why is that date so far out? Well, once we build that surcharge, it may be upwards of 6 months plus before that settlement fully occurs and we can remove that surcharge. And once that is able to happen, there's a significant amount of work to remove that and complete the remaining items for that project. So we're very excited to get going on that project. County Road 14, the slope repair, final plans, and documents are all at MnDOT for MnDOT's final plan review. And then Federal Highway will also review, and we have to receive authorization from them then to be able to proceed with advertising. And I'm hoping within the next week to 2 weeks that we receive that approval to start advertising for that project, and we intend to also build that project yet this year. So a lot of late season work will be occurring on those 2
Hey,
projects.
Seth, on County Road 12, what kind of culvert did you guys decide to put in? Because there was some.
For the equalization pipe
Yeah.
through there, it will be, I believe it's a 36-inch diameter steel pipe, and the type, and now this isn't your regular corrugated steel metal culvert. This is, I can't remember exact thickness, but I believe we're at 1 inch or 1.25 inch wall thickness.
Okay.
This is pipe material that you would use in, say, a piling type function. So it's got a lot of strength, and it's also made of weathering steel. So the outside of this pipe will corrode, but the corrosion protects the remaining part of the pipe, and so this pipe should last a very, 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 very long time before you would ever see any type of corrosion to an extent that you'd have to replace the pipe.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other?
Nope, that's all I
Questions,
have.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Thank you, Seth. As the new chair apparently coming up of the ATP, our Area Transportation Planning through MnDOT, our meeting is coming up on Friday.
Yes.
And I've asked Greg Ost at MnDOT to can you give any hints as to what with the COVID and the George killings have done in terms of whether or not we're still on track?
I have not been briefed on MnDOT's process on submitting their grants and moving that project forward. I do know that MnDOT is actively continuing to work and develop that project, so it's ready to go once either the federal loan or federal grants are available to construct that.
Right, and the whole, Mr. Chair, if I may, the whole 2 months, 3 months, whatever months it's going to be, that fewer people are driving, the gas tax revenues have gone down. I think we spoke to it last time, Commissioner Morrow, $400 million fewer in those dollars, but this money would be separate federal, applying for federal grants, correct?
Correct.
We'll hope to get that clarified Friday from Greg Oss if he's able to provide us some more detail.
Yeah. Commissioner, more than likely I will not be at that meeting, as I will be out probably at the CASA 21 bridge project for setting of those concrete beams.
Okay.
Yep.
What's the Friday meeting?
It's the area transportation
okay.
planning committee, John,
Okay.
which is different from
Highway 14, yes.
Which is coming up, I think there's a virtual meeting on that, either this
Tomorrow night.
this Wednesday or next Wednesday afternoon. Tomorrow, 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else for Seth? Hey, just take care of Ron's thistles, please.
The guys have already been out spraying this spring, and they're also starting to do their mowing activities.
They were mowing
So,
by me yesterday.
yep. One thing about County Road 21 too is that we have a very, very narrow right-of-way corridor. So it's only 33 feet from the center of the road. So once you get off that shoulder, there's not a whole lot of county right-of-way that we maintain, and we try not to spray outside of that.
So it's only a 2-rod road?
Well, 33 feet from either side of the center
So 4
line.
rods, 4
Yeah.
rod road.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
right.
Anybody got anything else?
Thanks, Seth.
Yeah, thank you, Seth. Chair's report. Did a rural Minnesota Energy Board meeting on Zoom. Did a extension meeting, an extension meeting on Zoom. Did District 7 meeting, the rest of you. Sat through a webinar from general government about the legislative session this year that was actually the same time as one of our meetings. So I watched a recording of it, and it was, well, it's 2 weeks old, so actually everything they told me I knew by now anyway. And they are busy working on County Road 12, putting electric lines under the road right now. So Terry?
Extension, public health, the District 7 that you mentioned, AMC Health had a conversation, has another one coming up tomorrow, and had an interesting conversation with what's called the Big Four, which is the League of Minnesota Cities, AMC, Townships, and the School Boards Association on legislative and other issues.
Anything you want to share from that?
Just trying to figure out how things open up and what to do in terms of second wave if one ever comes.
Sure. Okay. Denny?
Brown Nicollet Community Health Board, and I need to advance my calendar here. You'll have to bear with me 1 second. Seems like we're doing a lot of various electronic formats. I had MRCI board meeting, stakeholders meeting, District 7 meeting with the rest of my peers. We had a broadband teleconference on Friday, just clarifying some issues and some questions about how that report will come forward, looking at some other players and how they would play into that. Added AMC Public Safety Committee meeting yesterday. Lots of movement, lots of discussion about amending state statute and it was a cautionary tale for most of our board members about not being too precipitous and changing too much statute in kind of a environment that puts us under stress. And so that was the going forward there, and that's all I have.
Okay, Marie?
From the Community Health Court Executive Committee meeting, the EMC via Zoom, chatting with Tri-County Solid Waste and staff regarding the collection in July in Nicollet County and how that may or may not look, a broadband discussion, Region 9 Board of Director meeting, and then last Thursday I attended the first meeting of, or second meeting of the One Watershed, One Plan meeting in Gaylor, which is challenging to get to these days.
Oh,
I didn't drive on any gravel, but I was close.
okay. You can't get there on 22? Together?
No.
Oh. Okay, Jack?
Well, it's cold.
111 is.
I didn't know it was that far north. Okay.
All the way up to 1, wasn't it, the first piece of it? So,
Jack?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May 28th, Maple Planning, May 29th, TDS. Joined all the commissioners and members for the AMC district meeting. And we had our Maple meeting last Thursday, which is moving ahead with some controversy, but hopefully we can keep that process clean. TDS Finance on the 5th met yesterday with Greg Oss and planning our area transportation planning meeting for this Friday.
Thank you, Jack. Any commissioner meetings or conferences? Nothing there?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just the one thing I should have mentioned, I apologize, was in this phone call I mentioned earlier with the Big Four, Steve Simon, Secretary of State, gave a long discussion. And Jackie, you and I might touch base because he's going to do a second one in talking about what to look for and how to plan for the August and November elections. And it's fascinating and it's complicated. So I feel for you, Jackie.
Thank you. So, per diems and expenses,
move it.
Second.
motion and a second, discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn, any discussion? All in favor, say
Aye.
aye. Passes, we are adjourned. I wanna reopen this hearing on ditch 77. And I'm asking Jackie to come up to the podium.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board.
Hey, Jackie.
The purpose of today's hearing is a continuation of the May 19th meeting. The May 19th meeting was recessed in order for Ron Rehnquist, our viewer, to update and correct the determination reports for the 2 crawl properties. He did update those 2 determination reports for the 2 crawl properties, and they've been sent to all landowners. They are in your packet as well. On June 2nd, the landowners did get copies of the updated reports for the crawl property, and ISG also updated their proposed cost reports for options 1 and 2 and how the change in the amount of the improvement benefits affected both those options. Since the mailing of those reports, as of yesterday afternoon, Ron Rehnquist had a conversation with a landowner that is changing those benefits again. And Ron has sent those benefit changes. They actually would impact both the redetermination benefits that was adopted last year in June 2019 and the determination benefits which have not been adopted. Ron is on the phone and he can further describe that and what he will be asking for. I will actually ask the county attorney if she has any other input on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps I will allow Mr. Rehnquist to update the board on the recommendations that he is making to change the redetermination of benefits report that this board adopted back in June of 2019. The board likely will have to make then a decision about how it wishes to proceed today. The redetermination report, as I indicated, was adopted by the board in 2019. And technically, for speaking only procedurally, once that petition, or excuse me, that redetermination is adopted and the appeal period is complete, that becomes a final report that can't just simply be altered or changed without another action to modify it. That being said, what I anticipate Mr. Rehnquist to indicate is that there was an error in that report regarding the efficiency rating, which will then have an impact on benefits from the system, which can then have a ripple effect on future calculations for repairs and improvements. And so the board will need to consider whether it wants to act to correct that report, which I believe needs to have some notice to the landowners that are involved, because I can't sit before the board today and tell the board or the landowners what ripple effect that might have, because we just learned of this issue late yesterday, this morning, trying to figure out how to properly proceed to that. So there's really two choices from the board, is to either move forward as is because it's become a final document, or act to modify it, but then that would require coming back in 2 weeks to give notice to landowners. But I would ask Mr. Rehnquist to update the board as to what the error was, how he learned of it, and the impact it might have on future calculations related to this system.
Okay, Mr. Rehnquist, are you there?
Say it again.
Mr. Rehnquist, are you online?
Yes, the background is still hard to hear you, but yes, I'm here.
We may need to repeat what.
Mr. Rehnquist, did you hear my presentation to the board?
Maybe you could
I don't think he can hear you. You might have to come up to
You want me to?
Yeah, go ahead.
Ron, did you hear Michelle's presentation to the board?
I think so. Once again, the volume is not very good, but I heard her generally describe it. I couldn't tell you in great detail, but I think she covered it.
So, asking I don't know if you want to repeat it or.
that mic's a little louder.
Mr. Rehnquist, can you hear me on this?
Yeah, you're still in the background, but I can hear you.
Yeah, just go up to
Mr. Rehnquist, can you hear me better here?
Very well, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Rehnquist, what I explained to the board is that yesterday there was a submission made with a proposal for you to modify the redetermination report that was adopted in June of 2019 by the board. And what I had asked is for you to explain to the board how that correction was determined, what it impacts, and particularly what impact it may have on future calculations regarding repairs and improvements, so the board can decide whether it wishes just to proceed on the original redetermination report that was finalized in June of 2019, or continue this hearing to give notice to all landowners and look to adopt a new or corrected redetermination report.
Okay, thank you. What came about yesterday in discussions with Mr. Schmidt was that a part of his parcels actually drained back into what is classified as lateral 2A, which, from what I understand, he described as being the original tile system prior to the construction of the current open ditch. When I looked at that, it's an obvious but not discovered, what I would say, an error to that report. Because yes, I will agree that that land very well could drain and most likely does drain into the old lateral 2A. So in order to accommodate that and correct the error in the redetermination and remove those specific acres from being benefited from the upper watershed, what we ended up looking at was altering the efficiency rate to the specific acres that now drain, are now recommended to drain into the redetermined benefits. That would affect slightly the distribution of the costs of the maintenance, and would affect the benefits to the determination of benefits or the distribution of the costs of the improvement, because they would no longer pay the improvement part, only the redetermined or the separable maintenance portion of that. In his parcel, it accounts for about a $3,000 shift from improvement cost to a lesser value in the redetermination and separable maintenance cost. When we looked at that, there were two other parcels that also drained through his parcel and into that same adjusted watershed. I think Mr. Bramble has a map that could show the area that we're looking at.
It's on the screen.
That would be transferred to the redetermined benefits at a higher efficiency of 87 to 93% efficiency rather than the 73 that was applied originally, thinking that that land would be drained back into the upper watershed. With that consideration, it changes the benefits from the redetermination by about $16,000, give or take just a few dollars. The original benefit as adopted was $2,198,856. By correcting that, the amended benefits go to $2,214,838. So it's within a few dollars of $16,000 of additional benefit in the redetermination. It removes a little more than that from the determination because of the proximities and efficiencies, but that's that's a separate report to do the benefits of the improvement.
Okay, is that it from him, folks, for now?
If you'd like, I can explain the map
Yes, Chuck,
real quick.
You're next on the,
I just wanted to explain the map real quick. So the area in red and yellow, essentially the previous report had it draining into the lateral 2 ditch. The lateral 2 ditch is being improved, but it actually drains into the lateral 2A tile, which the improvement stops right where that tile comes in. So it moves it from an improvement benefit to essentially all separable maintenance. If that's an easy way to explain it visually, that was what was brought up, at least to me yesterday. So
it's downstream from where they previously thought.
Correct. Yep.
Yes, Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chuck, is this the issue that was brought up at the last meeting? This is a different one. Okay.
The issues that were brought up at the last meeting, the crawl property was adjusted. It had, I believe, the benefit, and Ron can explain this better, but that property was adjusted because it had too much on the improvement. And then if I also the where are we? The cement property was also adjusted.
Looking at that, Chuck,
yeah.
the adjustment to the crawl property was caused by a split between the time of the adoption of the redetermination and the submitting of this report. And what happened was I did the split on the redetermined values and I copied that over to the improvement values. And I forgot to adjust the efficiencies, so it had the same efficiency on the redetermined benefits as well as on the improvement. So the report that was corrected and resubmitted brought the redetermined or the determined efficiency back
You
Do you-
have more comments?
I have some other updates, but I don't know if you want to proceed with that before you talk about the redetermination or not.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If I might. I have a question, procedurally. I don't know whether, Chuck, the other information you want to discuss is relevant to the question of what we do about the July 2019 redetermination and whether we go back.
Yeah, no, it's not.
So, Mr. Chair, I might suggest, but I certainly would defer to other members of the board, we may want to resolve that question before we get into other matters that aren't related to that question. Because if we're going to be having another hearing in 2 weeks, then maybe Chuck, I would defer to everyone else, but I think it's an open question. Do we do the procedural question first?
And I have a
Yes.
question for the county attorney. I think the redetermination issue we need to, in my mind, I need to resolve first because this has a long-term impact. It isn't just this event that we're talking about, it's going forward because any other changes that are made on that system are going to be based on that redetermination. So my question is, if we choose to amend that redetermination, how does that process go forward? Is it merely another hearing? And do we have to, obviously we have to post it because it's gonna be changed and we have to give notice to everybody on the system. But is 2 weeks timely enough?
Technically, we have to do the 3 weeks of publication for that.
Okay, that was my,
And
okay.
and we're not really, you're correcting an error. There's not really a procedural path to follow in the statute per se. You're correcting an error to ensure that moving forward, proper numbers are being utilized.
Right. I guess my question is though, absent any instruction in statute, are we not better served by using the process we normally would to give full posting and full notice so we acted in good faith, as opposed to short-circuiting the process? And that's a procedural question because you have to defend it, but that's my question.
It's always better to give more notice than to give less notice, because then everyone is aware of what you are doing. And I also just want to be mindful that you can move forward without doing the correction as well. And I'm not advocating one way or the other. I'm just indicating that you don't necessarily have to correct it. You can move forward on the original redetermination report because that was a finalized document, but you would do so knowing that there is an error in the document itself.
Well, and that infers to me that we're not doing our due diligence. It's an issue of fairness to all those that are being impacted by this. I understand the frustration of this gallery on the issue of not moving forward, but we also have to think long-term and how does this impact our going forward? And so I would argue that we are better served by going through the posting process and clarifying the redetermination component before we do this. But
And if I may, Mr. Chair, I am joining in that frustration because I wish I would have had time to sit here today
Right.
to tell you that this is the long-term ramification for those that are sitting in the gallery, but it would cause speculation and moving very quickly to try to make that analysis, and I'm not comfortable doing so in the very short period of time that we had to take a look at this issue.
and I'm not comfortable putting you in that position.
So Chuck, are you done with your comments or?
I do have additional information, but if you're going to stop at this point, then I can present it today or I can present it at another time.
Well,
Mr. Chair, I guess I'm back to my same point of, do we resolve this issue or do we have Chuck give the rest of the report? And
I don't
maybe
know the answer to that question.
well, I think we have to decide what that question is gonna look like. So in trying to expedite this somehow, I would make the motion that we continue, and Madam County Attorney, I have to get the language correct, so my goal here is to continue this public hearing until the matter is resolved with regard to the corrections of the redetermination. Is that consistent?
I think you would want to continue the public hearing on
Yep.
the improvement, and then also note the correction of the, and also note the correction, or set the date to correct the redetermination report. And I'm gonna call on Jackie to tell you when that date
What that
might
date
be.
is? I just,
We'll use the good microphone here. Just looking at my calendar, so thinking this through really quickly would be, like Michelle said, continue this hearing to possibly 10:30. And I would suggest setting the hearing for the redetermination correction at 10. So we technically have two
We can do it
public
all in one.
hearings that same day. If I'm thinking of that correctly, I would have to have 3 weeks of publication. I think we could.
and I would support a special just for this.
But I think we could possibly, it would work on the 14th of July. I don't know what we have scheduled that day.
That should work.
You don't,
I got a hearing in Heron Lake that day.
okay?
From 9 to 11, with an hour and a half drive each side, so.
The 14th actually is quite tight with the paper, because they like a week time on those publications. And also Ron would have to create property owners reports for the redetermination portion. On the redetermination portion alone, and then we would be okay on the second hearing. There'd be nothing out there, but I would need to collect those from Ron. So,
So would the 28th be a better date?
or,
We do have a special one.
or we
Yeah.
do it on the 21st, as I believe you have board workshop that day,
Correct.
Sure. We can move it around for that.
We did that last month.
Yeah,
so-
we did.
and it seemed to work. So I don't know the timing on the board workshop, but I'd suggest
Well,
setting the
We'll
hearing.
make it work, I think.
Could we check with Ron?
Check.
Ron making,
I have a hearing at 11 in La Center. So,
Well, okay.
and it's not a long hearing, so.
What if we move I don't know what's on the calendar for everyone on the 21st, but what if we start the ditch proceedings at 8:30 that morning? Is that?
Yeah, we could do that. If we need to, we can do that.
Yeah.
or you can do it after lunch.
Or we could do it after lunch too.
Both of you.
Those work for me.
How about the folks in the gallery, a preference between 8:30 and 1 o'clock
Morning would work better,
for more people?
at
Probably.
least for me.
Got a lot of nods for 8:30.
We can make all that work, it's not a problem.
Okay,
What
so
date are we talking about?
21st of July,
Could,
Jack.
could we check that Ron's available?
Ron, did you hear
Yes.
that? Are you available July 21st at 8:30 a.m.?
July, yes, I will make that available.
And does this give Ron adequate time to generate all the reports that we need to do the redetermination component?
Ron, does that give you adequate time to redo the redetermination
Yeah.
components?
Right.
I should be able to update the property owners' reports other than the explanation. I will put draft explanation language at the top and get that to Jackie, hopefully later today.
Okay. And
Okay, so I would request to set the hearing for the redetermination correction at 8:30 a.m. on July 21st.
Make that part of your motion, sir?
But also then, it is our goal then that if we have a successful resolution of that redetermination, we will then reconvene this hearing that same.
At 9 o'clock,
correct?
I would
At nine-
suggest,
well,
or
well, we have to post it-
after.
We have to post a time, so 9 o'clock.
Right, so I think
We
we're
always
moving
go
to,
late.
Yeah,
I think we're moving to hold the redetermination hearing at 8:30 on July 21st.
yes.
And we're gonna continue this hearing until 10 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
Oh, 9 o'clock.
I don't
Excuse
think
me,
it'll
9
take
o'clock.
too
I'm sorry,
long.
I got it wrong. 9 o'clock
Okay.
on the 21st.
Because by then, all the property owners will have received written notice, And we'll have had adequate time to question anything with Jackie's office between then and now, is that?
Do we have a second on that?
Well, we have it.
One suggestion on the time, just so we're trying to be somewhat efficient. I don't know if the first hearing will take a half hour or not, so I believe we can just advertise both hearings at 8:30. We just can't start before 8:30, we can always start them after.
Well, and technically, the improvement hearing doesn't have to be advertised, because
Because
we're
it's-
just continuing it.
Correct.
So
Right.
you could
So-
even set it for 8:45 to be
Okay, that's fine.
efficient.
Let's do that, or you could set it for 8.
I am happy with that. I just think we need to stick to a defendable procedure.
Let's come back to that. Let's just see.
I'm sorry.
Abby, do you have the motion?
I think Madam County Attorney is putting it together.
I was writing dates down, I
Oh.
did not keep your motion. The motion would, I think is what you had indicated, is that we would, you were moving to continue the improvement hearing
Yes.
to July 21st, and that you were moving to set a published hearing on July 21st at 8:30 to correct the redetermination report, and directing that Mr. Ringquist issue amended property owner reports on the redetermination.
Is that everything?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Well,
Or
I-
any discussion?
Yeah, I would just want to say, I do agree with Danny. My math may be a little wrong, but I think it's about a 4% difference.
Yeah.
And
Well, but that
I
has
just
a
think
cascade in
and
my
it
mind.
does,
And
so-
because if we're making these redeterminations, it's also, and those dollars may be bigger 10 or 15 years from now if we have to do something else. So I think it's very important that we give everybody a fair and equitable shake at this, and I think that's part of what we have an obligation to do.
And just want to clarify, we found this out this morning,
Right.
last night.
So,
And I guess I don't like having all these people have to come down here. what,
I agree.
6 trips already, maybe?
I absolutely agree.
But that's why I want
This is our best option, right?
We want to be right,
Yes.
in my view.
More discussion, questions? All in favor of the motion?
I
Opposed? Passes. So that passes. Do we want to have any public input at this time, or probably not a good reason
No, we
for it?
don't have an open meeting anymore. We've extended the leave.
So I would recommend, well, open hearing, I guess.
No, we didn't.
Recessing.
Was there anything else on the drainage authority agenda?
We just
I
need.
need a motion for the consent agenda.
Yeah.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, second, and consent agenda. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Yes, Danny?
I'm looking at the agenda here. I think we can adjourn. I just want to be very clear to those of you in the
Yes.
gallery what our intent was here. And it was not to make it more burdensome for you to come and do this, but we also want to make sure that what we do is right. And there were some errors that we, as the board, did not control. We found the error, and in my mind, and that's what I argue for, is the due diligence to make sure that the long-term impact, as Mr. Schmidt had told us at our last open meeting, let's do this and let's do it right. I understand where you want to be, and that's my attempt to gain that. So again, I apologize for making you come, but I think it's incredibly important that we be consistent and be fair. So thank you for that, and again, that's where I stand. So thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Move to adjourn. Second.
Motion, second to adjourn. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Passes.